Welcome to Cooking with Science. I'm Todd Silver, your host, and today we're at the US Arboretum, just outside our nation's capital. They're open every day except for Christmas, and they got a lot of cool stuff here, especially the National Bonsai and Penjing Museum. I have some really exciting guests today. I want to first introduce Chef Jessica. She's the chef instructor of the Hospitality Management Program at Montgomery College in Rockville, Maryland. So Jessica, tell us a little bit about yourself and then what you're cooking today.
Well, thanks, and I'm excited to be here cooking with you today at this beautiful location. My background has been primarily in fine dining and particularly in Italian cuisine. For the last decade, I've spent my career opening restaurants in Washington and elsewhere in the country, but I've also spent about a decade as an instructor, teaching in culinary schools, and recently joined the staff faculty at Montgomery College in the Hospitality Management Program, where I teach all of the food production, catering and banquets labs.
Okay, perfect. And then I have two ARS scientists here today. First, I want to introduce Dr. Karen Cichy. She's a research geneticist. And next to her is Dr. Ray Glahn. He's a research physiologist.
Okay, so I am a plant breeder geneticist, and I work in East Lansing, Michigan. And my research relates to improving dry beans and pulses for end-use quality. So in the US, we don't tend to eat very many beans or pulses, and so I'm trying to make them more appealing. And some of the things that I work on are shortening the cooking times, improving the flavor, making them better for how they look in cans, and also trying to innovate new ingredients such as making them into flour to be used as pasta.
I'm Ray Glahn. I'm a nutritional physiologist, of course working for USDA-ARS. We focus on the nutritional quality of staple food crops. Beans and many other crops are things that we work on. One of our major focuses is going to be on iron nutrition and mineral bioavailability.
Okay, wonderful. So today we have a lot of ingredients here, Jessica. So what are we making today?
Well, today we are going to be making a soup.
Okay.
And the special thing about this soup is that it's using both buckwheat and beans. This is called a Zuppa Etrusca, and it's named for the Etruscan people, an ancient people that settled in what is now Tuscany. And they were known for their diet of primarily legumes and grains, cereal grains, and vegetables. So we have all of that in this soup.
Okay.
Today.
And then you came up with the idea for this season to be buckwheat and beans, which it's a pretty interesting combination.
Well, from a personal perspective, they're two of my favorite foods. And they're also two foods that are a huge part of my diet. For me, I'm always looking for ways to use them, novel recipes, trying different kinds of beans, using buckwheat in all different ways, as a flour, as a grain, in soups and porridges and salads. And so both of these products are really versatile and also extremely nutritious.
You've prepped pretty much everything so far, and
yep,
we'll have
we spent some time in our Rolling Raptor,
yes,
which is the food truck of our hospitality program.
Perfect.
So we actually have a food truck entrepreneurship course that we do, that we offer, and the students will take the Rolling Raptor out and actually create a business plan and operate it.
That's really cool. Some of my best meals have been in food trucks. So.
I'm with you there. Yeah. So we're starting the soup with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, about a couple tablespoons, and then we're going to add in our, what we call in Italian as our soffritto. So it's like all of our base aromatics. So today we've got a couple of different things. I've got some leeks here, I've got some scallions or green onions, and I've got some garlic. We also have carrot and celery. So those are going to go in first.
Beans are a relatively nutrient-rich and nutrient-dense food. Whether you're a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian, they're a great thing to have in your diet. They have a lot of nutritional health benefits aside from fiber. You have minerals, you have the flavonoids, and antioxidants are particularly rich in certain bean varieties.
And it's interesting because all the beans have different characteristics health. So they're not all the same. They don't have the same amount of fiber or antioxidants. So it depends on what type of bean you're eating.
I would say that we can say that all beans are a very good source of dietary fiber, and they're all a very good source of protein. They're all rich in minerals. Some of the different color beans that you get might have a better antioxidant potential. Some might be better for iron. Some might be better for other things. So for some of those health benefits, maybe you would want to choose a different market class. Yeah.
Okay. So Jessica, how are we doing here? So
so I've got all my aromatic vegetables in.
Smells good.
They're starting to sweat down, cook down. The other thing that I'm going to add, I've got my bouquet garni. So we've got rosemary, we've got sage, we've got 2 different kinds of thyme, and we also got something really cool, which is savory, which is known as the bean herb. So savory and beans pair really well together. We're going to toss these in here, and then we'll pull those out at the end, but they're going to flavor our soup.
So that's interesting. When I cook with herbs, I usually keep them in. Should you take them out when they're done?
It depends, like if you want them in or not. I mean, these herbs that we're using for the soup are what I would call like woody herbs.
Okay.
So you can chop them really fine and put them in things like soup, especially if they're going to be long cooking.
Okay.
The kinds of herbs that I usually will leave in are soft herbs like basil or parsley or cilantro or whatever. Something like that that's not going to be too gritty, but it's really a personal preference.
Okay. I know that one of the reasons that you both are concentrated so much in beans is you're trying to get more into the American diet. One of the biggest hesitations to eating beans is this kind of digestive issues. So if I wanted to eat more beans and get it into my diet, what can I do to relieve myself of that?
I have a couple of suggestions. First of all, a lot of the stomach problems are caused because they're so high in fiber. So if you're already eating a diet that's high in fiber, you probably won't have as many problems. But if you aren't and you want to start introducing beans, do it gradually so your body can get used to that amount of fiber. And then secondly, some of the sugar compounds called oligosaccharides cause issues with digestion. And if you soak your beans overnight before cooking, that could help a lot. And if you rinse your canned beans, for example, you can get rid of some of those sugars.
Okay. Let's check in with Jessica over here.
Okay, so while that's cooking, I'm grinding up some dried fennel seeds, but whole. And these are going to go into the base too.
And you love cooking with beans. So that's one of your favorite things. So what is it about beans that you really enjoy cooking with?
For me, there are a lot of benefits, some of which have already been described. From a health perspective and a nutrition perspective, because they're such a huge part of my diet, you know, that their nutritional value and getting that protein and the iron and other nutrients is really important to me because I eat little to no meat.
Right.
They're so vibrant in colors and shapes and textures and flavors. So it's just fun to experiment to see kind of like which beans are going to go with which types of foods, how the flavors can be very different, how the textures are different. It's just exciting product to work with.
Okay.
So.
Jessica, do you find that people experience better, longer satiety? So it sort of lasts longer for them and then they consume less food as a result?
Well, I'm always hungry.
Me too.
I'll never pass up a plate of food. But yeah, I think you're right. They're extremely filling. And especially when you pair them with grains and fresh vegetables, you have a really satisfying and nutritious meal. Like this soup right here is sort of like a power food soup, because we have the nutrition from the beans, we've got the nutritional power of the buckwheat, and we're using buckwheat today as our grain, but you could also use any other grain, wheat, farro, rye berries, barley berries, you could use sorghum, you could use rice.
I like bulgur in my soups too.
Bulgur,
I think it gives it like a hearty flavor to it.
Yes, so we also have, I'm using 3 different kinds of beans in this soup. So the first one we're using is black-eyed pea, actually, and this one, and all the beans I've cooked with a little piece of kombu, seaweed, and that helps give flavor to the beans, and also it helps to make the beans more digestible. We are also using the USDA's and Karen's manteca bean or honeycomb bean, which is a yellow bean. So that's really exciting to work with this product that's been specifically developed. And the other bean we're going to be using is a gigante bean, which is a white bean.
And they're gigantic, so I can see where the name comes from.
Yes, and this is, I think this is in the lima family, but it has a creamy texture, and it just, you know, with these three beans are all different shapes and have a little different color, so they're going to add some variety to the soup.
And the taste will be different, so you get
They will have a slightly different taste, yes. And we're going to work with more beans, and we'll see even more flavors.
Wonderful, wonderful. So this was developed recently, the Manteca yellow bean.
Manteca is yellow jacket.
Yellow jacket, okay. And that is going to be a big hit in other parts of the world because, of course, beans are a staple, especially like in the places like Africa. So why is the Manteca almost like a game changer for them?
Okay. Cooking time is actually a very big deal for consumers who eat a lot of beans, because if we look at these dry beans here, some of them can take us here maybe 30 minutes to cook, but if you go to places in Africa where people are consuming maybe 40 kilograms of beans a year, they're not soaking them, they're using firewood to cook them, and they could be spending anywhere from 3 to as much as 8 hours cooking. So finding beans that have shorter cooking times, like our honeycomb and yellow jacket, are really, really helpful.
But they also have a boost in the nutritional value too, right?
You know, the trait, the fast cooking is a bridge trait that helps to increase the adoption and utilization of the beans. So in many parts of Africa, you have parts of the population that could be 60–70% experiencing anemia and iron deficiency. So beans are an excellent vehicle for getting more iron, more absorbable iron into the diet of those individuals to combat that nutritional deficiency.
And let me ask you this, why don't Americans consume more beans? I mean, they're loaded with fiber, they have other nutritional benefits too. I know this is a big part of basically your goals is to get Americans to, but why aren't they?
We have so many choices in America. We are so fortunate with our diverse food supply. And I think that's part of it. I think now Americans are getting more and more health conscious and making better choices with foods. And not all beans are created equal. So it's important that they start, you know, diversing their diet. We'd like to see about a 3 to 4-fold increase in pulse crop and, you know, bean consumption for Americans.
And you mentioned that every American should be getting what, about a cup and a half a week of beans?
Yep, the US dietary guidelines recommend a cup and a half of cooked beans or other types of pulses, which could be chickpeas, lentils, peas, black-eyed peas, a cup and a half a week. But you could really go much more. You can go to 3 cups a week or even a cup a day is probably great.
Okay, wonderful. So we're putting the beans in here, the gigantic beans.
We're going in with a few gigante beans first. These have already been cooked.
Okay.
I cooked them, as I said, with a little bit of kombu, a little bit of salt. We also put some garlic in there during the cooking time. You could also put herbs. I like to kind of keep it simple. We've got a lot of flavors going on there as well. And then I've got our honeycomb beans. And the other thing you can do to make this soup thicker or sort of a little bit more hearty is to actually puree some of the beans and then add them back into the soup. So that helps to thicken it up.
Okay.
And then we're adding our black-eyed peas. But yeah, you want to make sure you have enough, sort of make it brothy. So these buckwheat groats, we cook them like using the sort of what we call in culinary school the sort of simmering method. So like if you were to cook rice in just boiling water and then drain it. Okay. So they get drained out of their water.
And the beans that you made were all started with dry beans, not canned, correct?
Right. So these beans we soaked overnight.
Okay.
The honeycomb beans took about 15 minutes to cook. So Karen has done an excellent job in making these beans very quick cooking. So they took less than half the time of the gigante beans and about a little bit more than half of the time of the black-eyed peas.
Okay.
So, awesome, thank you.
So speaking of the manteca, you got this wild contraption over here that I want you to tell us about, because this is part of the science, which is the fun part of this show. Tell us about what you do with this contraption, what you hope to achieve.
Okay, so we've been talking about cooking time and how important it is as a trait for consumers. Now the challenge comes as scientists, how do we measure cooking time? And how do we measure it reliably and objectively on lots of samples? So this is called a Matson cooker, or a pin drop cooker over here. And this is what we have been using in my lab and many other labs to accurately determine what a cooking time is. And basically you just put 25 soaked seeds on these wells, and they are laying under pins. And then you take this whole device and you put it on a hot plate with boiling water. And then when a pin drops, that means the bean is cooked. And we measure the cooking time when 80% of those pins have dropped. So it's a very reliable way to determine what is the cooking time of many different types of beans.
And did you use this technique for the manteca, for the yellow jacket?
Yes, this is how we developed it. That's how we selected to identify the fastest cooking bean, was through using that device. Yep.
That's great. That's great.
So cool.
Yeah. All right, how are we doing over here?
So what I've done, I've added the beans in, I've added some vegetable stock, and I've also added some of the cooking liquid from the beans themselves. So they have a lot of, as you cook the beans, as you soak the beans, the nutrients will leach out into the water. So we want to not lose those. So I like to save the liquid that the beans are cooked in, not so much the soaking liquid, and use that in things like soup or in pasta sauces to keep both the flavor and as much nutrition as we can get. So that's simmering away, and I did season it with a little salt and pepper. And I'm gonna just give a little touch of red chili flake, not too spicy.
Well, I'm not really a spice guy.
No worries. The other ingredients we have are Swiss chard and kale, and all of in addition to the beans and the grains, being variable to whatever you have on hand or whatever your interest is at the moment. Okay. And same with the vegetables. The other thing that I added in here was some diced up zucchini, but really any green vegetable can work. I like just for the color pop, so I've put green beans in here, peas, so really whatever.
I like everything you're throwing in there, so it works for me.
So I'm just going to give this a taste and see where we are in terms of the vegetables cooking, because the beans and the grains are already cooked. Okay. So it's more about our veggies.
And while you're tasting, let's dive into the research you're working on now, Karen and Ray. So Karen, why don't you start first? What are you working on right now?
One thing we're working on, you talked a little bit about how U.S. consumers don't eat enough beans, and we are trying to find innovative products for them to eat more beans. And so we've been trying to mill our beans into flour and then make them into products. And one product we've found to be very successful is pasta. And so this, our manteca yellow actually does really well when we mill it into a flour and make it into a pasta. It does well nutritionally, which Ray can comment on, but also flavor. It has a really mild flavor. And U.S. consumers aren't necessarily used to that very strong beany flavor, so we think that might help people eat more beans.
So beans and iron nutrition are important. It's important to link those together, because iron deficiency is the leading deficiency in the world, affecting about 1/3 of the world's population. And that's a major focus of my lab and my research group. And what Karen has done by developing, and working with her to develop the manteca beans, we're creating fast cooking beans with high bioavailable iron, meaning the iron is very absorbable. And when it comes to iron, it's really key that you qualify the bioavailability of this mineral. By putting it into a pasta product, we're actually making a more nutrient-dense product there that has tested quite high relative to other pasta products in our laboratory for iron nutrition. And that's really exciting stuff. We're making it more dense. So, a lot of your food products might be fortified, like a wheat pasta or something like that. we have doubled the amount of iron in the pasta product, and it's natural. It's not coming in from a fortified product. So that's really exciting. We're more than doubling the delivery, the bioavailability of the iron in that product.
And that's because of the processing method of eating. When you're eating the whole bean, this is very scientific, but that cell wall is intact. But when you mill it into a flour, you break that cell wall, and then your body's able to access all those nutrients.
So we're finishing up the soup here. What have you put in there?
I put in a little bit more sliced scallions and some soft herbs to finish. So we've got basil, celery leaves, sort of the interior tender ones, and a little bit of fresh sliced or chopped parsley. And I'm going to add a little glug of extra virgin olive oil just to finish. And then we'll spoon this or ladle this up for you. In the bowl, I have just a nice slice of multigrain bread here. You could use
some hardiness.
Give it some hardiness. You could use any kind of bread that you like.
Okay. And you didn't chop up the basil. You
I just tore it. I don't like to put a knife through my basil because it bruises it. So I just tear it, and you still have all of the aromas and the bright color.
You guys hungry?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
this looks
I know.
great.
We've been at this for a while, so
Yeah.
we all should be hungry.
It's worth it.
It's definitely going to be worth it. And give me the name of the soup again.
This is Zuppa Etrusca.
Etrusca.
Etrusca, named for the Etruscan people.
Okay. I'll thank them next time I see
You
them.
could also call it beans and grains soup.
That's the American version of
That's your simple version. So I'm finishing with a little grated lemon zest because I think everything benefits from a little citrus, a little bright
Little pop
acidity
to
at
it?
the end.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll just put a little bit on there. All right. And then just one last glug because you can never have too much olive oil.
it. It's healthy,
Shine
good
it
for
up.
you. Yeah.
And, all right. Buon appetito.
Thank you.
Look at that.
Let's give it a
There you
shot.
go. I'm curious to see how you like it.
That's right. Well, while we're tasting, tell us, what is your favorite dish that you make with beans besides the zuppa?
I like bean salads. Beans, like when you just cook them and then you mix them with like a vinaigrette or a citronette, and they soak up that acidity and all those flavors. Like there's nothing better than a bean salad in the summertime.
This is amazing.
Delicious.
So you can definitely taste the different bean varieties that you put in there.
Yeah.
They do have a different profile.
Jessica, what I really like about what you said about recycling some of the stock into other recipes, and that's
Yes.
really important, because I can tell you there's so many nutrients that get lost if you're not doing that. You're just sending a lot of the flavonoids, a lot of the minerals right down the drain. So that's really
Yes, the bean
Very
cooking
nutritional
liquid is
advantage.
gold.
Ray, what do you like to cook beans with? What's the recipe
know,
you like?
I grew up on beans and chili. You know, I think that was something I always had, but that was always a favorite recipe. But I might have a new one, I think, right here. This is really good.
And Karen, do you have a favorite bean dish?
Lately, I've been just making refried beans with black beans and putting them on homemade corn tortillas with a little chipotle, and that's my favorite for now.
Oh, nice. A little heat with it then.
Yes.
Very good. Well, Jessica, this has been wonderful. Thank you very
Thank
much. Karen and Ray, thanks for joining us. And thank you all for joining us today on Cooking with Science with Buckwheat and Beans. It's been amazing. Thank you for the Arboretum for your hospitality. If you'd like to learn more about ARS, or if you'd like to learn more about the Montgomery College Hospitality Program, we'll have links at the end of the video. And stay tuned for our next episode. We're back with Jessica, and we're making pasta with buckwheat and beans. See you all later.